All right, guys, welcome back to the Dogmen Podcast. Myself, Tanner Herr,
Ed Barnes,
Cody Jenkins, Clue Anderson.
We drove down here south of our house a little ways. Clue, I feel like I've known you without knowing you. Everybody around the house is always, there's Luke Williams and the Craig Loftons and all them guys I've known growing up have talked about you and your dog hunting and all that. They've hunted with you and all that, and that's why I reached out to you is because of that. And I've always, this the stories I've been told.
Same thing with me. Like, you're a bit of a living legend.
Well, I hope you don't believe everything you've heard.
Well,
you can hear about anything you want to hear.
Yeah, it is kind of neat to finally meet you because, like Tanner saying, I'm in the same boat. Like, I kind of felt like I knew you just from all the stories that I ever heard, but this is the first time we ever met.
You might need to tell Luke to watch his mouth. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I've just lived a long time and, kept these old dogs, these old cur dogs. Got into the Plott dogs and, been, let's say, exposed to a lot of that type of action. These yellow dogs, I got my start in them from Ben Jordan. He was in southeastern Oklahoma from Smithville. He was a many-time world champion cowboy. But all he had ever done besides rodeo was run hogs in the woods and then in latter years run cattle down there. And he had to have good dogs. It's just old big rough mountain timber country. And them old cattle, they just graze the clear cuts. They might bed here in a clear cut tonight, and in the morning you hit their track. Dogs bay them 5 miles over there on the next cut. No pens, and Ben had to have good dogs. Well, he had a strain of leopard dogs in the beginning, and he fooled around and ran out. He lost out on his good leopard dog blood.
Ben started with leopard dogs?
Yes, as did I. When I was coming up, there weren't any yellow dogs in this part of the country. But about everybody had leopard dogs to pen cattle with, back when I was a kid. But anyway, Ben got disgusted, couldn't put together a set of dogs to suit him, and he hauled off 13 fat, barren cows. And told his wife he was going to find some dogs. He'd be home when he found some dogs. And he left. Of course, they was used to him being gone rodeoing all the time anyway,
What a time period are we talking about?
What time period?
Yeah.
Probably, this would have been in the 70s. When he got into the yellow dogs. And so he was at Texas, and of course he knows people all over the nation. And he went to a cow dog trials. And he seen a set of yellow dogs he really liked. But the people just swarmed that guy after his run, and Ben didn't know him, and he didn't get to talk to him. Well, he was at the saddle shop the next day and talking about that, and that guy said, "You want to talk to him?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I know him." He said, "That's Ricky Driver. I know him." He said, We'll go see him." So they went and visited with Ricky Driver. He had these, outstanding yellow dogs. And he gave Ben a pair of pups. And he loaned him a female that was an aunt to them pups. Now, what I always considered where the strength came from in this stock of yellow dogs was from a cross way back. Now, for many years, I didn't know this. I didn't know the history on them. I just got started in them, and I bred them and culled them on performance traits only. And there was a couple more, Ben and another guy or two done the same thing, and in latter years got to finding out what was behind them, and just so happened everything that I liked and kept that was considered good enough quality to breed, and the other guys as well, came from a couple of XYZ crosses right back here in the lineage. And so I say there's a couple of crosses behind them that produced the strength in this strain of dogs. One of them was a big boy blondie cross that Ricky had made years prior to Ben coming along. And then Ricky took a dog he had raised called Leroy and bred to a dog that Bob Owens' father owned called Liz. And that cross right there, I mean, bred strong for generations, still breeding strong. Bob Owens talked his dad and Ricky Driver into making that cross.
Owens is from
Eustis, Texas.
Okay, yeah.
Bob Owens. Hog hunted for years and years and years, was a racehorse trainer and a hog hunter. Well, he kept a dog out of that litter called Punch. And he bred down off of that Punch dog several generations until I met him. Well, Ben got litter mates to Punch was Henry and Blondie. And then he bred their aunt, the Jenny Jip, to Beaver's Crook. It was another old man down there in the mountains, and they had a stub-tailed yellow dog. It was really nice. And Ben bred Jenny to him and raised a litter. And they were really nice dogs, but for some reason everybody just kind of bred away from that cross. But he also bred the Jenny Jip to Jerry Camp's dog called Mo. Now, I got to see Mo work 25, 30 years or so ago at a dog trials. Really nice dog. Well, that produced, for men, he kept Ricky and B. So, you know, he got Henry and Blondie and Ricky and B, and they're related, you know, not just extra tight, but they're related. And I got acquainted with Ben, and I got a couple of Henry pups, and really got along with them. Lord, I had went through a semi-truckload of dogs trying to find some that suited me. Yeah. And finally, I found something I liked.
At this point, were you just pretty much working cows with them?
Yeah, at this time I was strictly cow dogging, yes.
And it was at the background of like Bob Owens and those other guys, were they were hog hunting some?
They were hog hunting explicitly. Bob was.
Oh, explicitly.
Ben was cowboying explicitly. He had quit the hog deal years before. It got to where they wasn't worth nothing at the sale barn, you know, for meat hogs. Yeah. You know, when all the hog farms come in. And so nobody fooled with them at all in the woods for a while. And then they come up with the hunting deal. And so some of the guys would catch boars and sell them. And that's where the wild hog deal was going in the mountains of southeastern Oklahoma at this time. So.
And you're still talking about the 70s? Or is that a little bit later now?
Yeah. In the 70s and through that time. Yeah. And so, anyway, I got a couple of Henry pups from Ben and got along with them real well. Well, I fooled around and got one of them died, and I got one killed. And I'm out of a dog. And I had heard about a guy here in Muskogee that had got some dogs from Ben. In fact, Ben told me who he was. His name was Mike Bauman. He was a banker. And I called him and asked him, you know, if he had any dogs to sell. Well, he had one of the dogs out of Henry. And they had bred Henry to what they called Johnson's Ugly. A family down there by the name of Johnson bred a Jip to old Henry. And they called her Ugly because her head had been caved in. Ben used to laugh and say old Henry wouldn't have nothing to do with her till after dark. But that's what this male dog was that Mike Bauman had. He was 3 years old. And he had a female out of that dog and a Phil Lyons Jip that he had. And he called her Jolene. And he priced them to me. And I said, well, you know, I want to come try them. And he said, well, I wouldn't let nobody take them and try them. I said, that's fine. You know, I'll come over there and we'll try them. But it was hot and they was soft. And, you know, they kind of played out. They didn't quit, but they played out pretty quick. And I told him, I said, man, I can't give that kind of money for them, you know, where they're so soft, and I didn't get to see no more out of them than I did. He said, well, I've heard about you. He said, you got some shade there where you live? I said, yeah. He said, well, if you'll give me a check, I'll let you take them for 2 weeks. And I did. I took them. and left him a check. And that male dog had a gosh awful reputation. They called him Ben. Had a gosh awful reputation for being a top end dog. But, these cur dogs is funny. And he just wasn't really G-hawing for me.
For you, yeah.
Now, the female, she was just a year younger than him. She was some kind of 2-year-old. And she was really firing. And I had just about made up my mind to tell him I wanted the female and not the male. And I was using them a little bit every day. And they're getting a little stronger and a little stronger. And finally, one day, I turned them loose over at the gate and sent them. They went in there half a mile and got bayed and was looking right. And just so happened, he called me that night. And I told him, I said, well, cash the check. I'm in. Now, a little bit of history on this Ben dog. He sired the Weatherford Ben dog. It had such notoriety that Randy Wright promoted for years. And that was the daddy to Weatherford's Ben. And the Jolene Gyp that I bought was Weatherford Ben's sister, littermate sister. So, that's a whole nother can of worms. But anyway, I got to fooling with them, and I decided, at that time, Ben and them wasn't, let's say, much interested in very close line breeding. And I decided, well, I'm going to do my best to breed Ricky to Henry. Ricky was the classiest lead dog I've ever seen turn loose. I've seen him walk backwards and bark 80 times a minute, sound like a Walker Coon dog treed for 5 miles, and then Ben holler, yo, Rick, and point, and he just walked backwards through the briars, still leading cattle. Classy dude. Henry was super, super tough. You couldn't wear his feet out, and you couldn't run him out of air. And they're related, and I'm going to try to breed Ricky to Henry. Well, I got this Jolene Gyp. It's a Henry granddaughter. I bred her to Ricky. First set of Yella pups I ever raised.
Where was the Ricky dog from? I don't remember.
Ricky was out of the Jenny Gyp, which was Henry's aunt, and out of Camp's Mo. And so I raised this litter of pups, and I kept 3 of them. Oh, actually, I wound up with 4 of them. I kept 4 of them. As nice a set of dogs as I've had yet. Didn't really know what I had. I just didn't really appreciate them for what they were.
You got a heck of a start.
I really did. I say I've been fortunate in falling into the really good breeders' bloodlines and getting started off, right up front. I didn't try to reinvent the wheel. I found something that I liked and have, for the last 42 years, tried to maintain it. They had the traits you needed and all the class, all the stay, everything you needed, and I've just tried to maintain it. Not nothing I done.
Yeah. I
piggybacked. So.
Everybody piggybacks.
If they're smart, they do. Yeah. Now, look, I don't have nothing against a crossbred dog. Personally, a good dog is where you find him. But I see guys really struggle. They go to trying to breed dogs like mixing paint. Breeding these 2 breeds together and hope they get that. And it's not impossible. But before you get them hybrid, crossbred dogs to consistently produced, you have to make them into their own family.
Yeah.
See, there's too many different genetic possibilities between this total outcross, even within one breed. You got to be really careful about making an outcross. You will bring in some recessives that can take you generations to get rid of. And but anyway, that's where I got my start in them at. Well, then next thing Mike Bauman, when I bought Ben and Jolene, he had 2 young Gyps. One of them had a cross of stuff in her that I wasn't interested in at all. But the other one, I tried to buy her while I was there. She was out of let me think. She was out of a Blondie, which was Henry's sister. She was out of a Blondie Ricky female and another Henry bred male. She was just a puppy. He had some Beefmaster cows there, and he turned them pups out of the pen, and they went and bayed them cows up, and she got run over and broke a leg. He took her to the vet. This all happened while I had them other dogs on trial. And I didn't know nothing about it. But, so he called me one day, and he said, hey, you want these 2 pups? And I said, I don't have no more dog money to spend, Mike. He said, they're not going to cost you nothing. He said, I spent $300 and some getting a pen, putting this one's leg and hauling her home. She jumped out of the truck and has tore that all up. I'm just going to give them to you. I don't want them. So I went and got her. I couldn't get there quick enough for that one female. I wanted that blood. Called her Alice. And I got her home and laid her down on the tailgate and got to looking. The bone was still in place. The pin was still in. It had just busted the stitches. I laid her down right there and got me some fishing line, sewed her back up. Supposed to have the pin removed in, I don't remember, 6-7 weeks. And about the time I was supposed to go have it done, it worked back up out of there and rubbed a hole in her hide and fell out in the chain circle.
Saved you money.
Yeah. But I could breed her to any one of those males that I raised out of Ricky and Jolene. And they was just cow dogs.
Yeah.
And I had hog hunted them 4 males, some, down there in the mountains also. I'd go down there often enough, they got to where they knew if I camped and left horseback in the morning, they would run through cows looking for hogs. But if I put them in the trailer and hauled them 5 foot, they'd be the first cow they came to. They got used to the routine, you know.
So you were using the same dogs for both.
Yeah. And I drove hogs. You know, you can drive hogs yet today if you find some that ain't had rough dogs or people been shooting in them.
But I mean, back at that time, it was probably easier to find those kind of hogs that you could drive, wasn't it?
Yeah, there wasn't as many had the rough dogs and the guns in them.
Yeah.
You know. And here just a few years ago, we bait a set of hogs with the Plott dogs. I swear if I'd have had some cur dogs with me, I could have drove them to a pen. They rallied good. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, if you're thinking about driving hogs, they need to rally. And if they rally, leave them a while. Go to the truck and drink you a beer or take a leak, do something, leave them bait. And when you come back and decide you're going to drive them, don't rush up in there hooping and hollering. Just ease up in there and kind of let them see you and getting a little tighter and a little tighter. And in a minute, they're going to shuffle. Well, if they shuffle all together and the dogs stop them again as a group, you got them. You can drive that set of hogs if your dog will work right.
Yeah.
You know, hogs and cattle both, they the head dog deal, it's kind of like a predator defense mechanism that makes it work for cattle or hogs. Cow and a hog both have to think they can win. If not, they're going to scatter.
Yeah.
It's their instinct to bunch up against predators. Well, if a major predator attacks a group and they can't whip it off, the next instinct is flee. And that's what scatters hogs and cattle. So that dog's got to really know how to balance pressure. That's why so many times the stock dogs is better at keeping hogs bait. And them old guys driving hogs all the time, they didn't have 6 or 7 dogs on the ground trying to catch a hog. They'd have 1 or 2, and he better back up and bark, and he better not catch a pig.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of their livelihood, you know. They didn't want to feed that dog that pig. I mean, they would kill one for that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, some of them had one that would catch on command, you know. But other than that, he wasn't going to catch one. And that's kind of the way that went. But I've kept them same yellow dogs, like I say, for 42 years, and still get along with them pretty good. Quite a few of them guys out of Texas have got pups along through the years and got along with them real well for hog dogs. And Bob Owens and his brother-in-law, David Rigney, they actually spawned that. I got acquainted with them, and I had a young dog here I called Cowboy that was a little extra sharp, and they made him internet famous.
All right, he was famous.
They made him internet famous. I'm talking about people calling me from all over, wanting to buy pups and wanting to breed gyps. And I've always, bred females for people that I know if felt like it could help them, and they used a dog. I might want a pup or two, I might not, but that's just all there was to it. But it got to where folks from all over the country calling, and gyps I didn't know nothing about. I mean, they was running us ragged. Finally, I told my wife, I said, I know how to put a stop to that. She said, what are you going to do? I said, next time a stranger calls, I'm going to tell him I want $500 to breed to that dog. Now, I would give $500 for a litter of puppies out of a super nice dog. But somebody with a bunch of junk or somebody that ain't really into dogs would not. I'll sift through them dudes that way. But I fooled around, and I had a new bulldog here. They got loose, and these cur dogs is pretty bad about fighting a strange dog. Now, turned loose to use them, they won't look at nothing. They won't bite a man. They won't fight a dog. But around the truck or the trailer around home, they're rough on stuff. And that bulldog got loose. We was gone, my daughter, to a softball tournament. And when I come in, the Cowboy dog was dead. He had overheated. His front legs was chewed up, and he died right at the water bucket. The bulldog wasn't even here. He died before his time. I know good and well that bulldog got loose and was just going through them, and old Cowboy got on him, and it was hot.
And he's on a chain.
And they fought till they give out, and he overheated and died.
Yeah.
You know how many times that's happened to people over the country, and it's always your
best dog.
Always your best dog.
You can't put one on the interstate if you ain't no good and get him killed. Yeah. It's just the way it works. But along about, it was really before old Cowboy come along and David and Bob had made him internet famous. I had decided to go to hog hunting up here. Well, I've had 100 people ask me, how come you hunt them Plott dogs? Why don't you hunt them cur dogs? So, well, I got them initially for and have bred them for cow dogs. And I just can't bring myself to break a set of them off of cattle so that I can hog hunt them. That's mainly what I got them for, was for cow dogs. And you cannot hunt a dog here that'll bait cattle.
Yeah, well, we're in cow country.
Yeah. I mean, people just don't understand, and it'll scare them to death. Mm-hmm. Now, down there, when I was hog hunting down at Ben's, he had 98 sections of Weyerhaeuser land. He told me come hunt, showed me where to camp. If you bait cattle, don't worry about it. Drive them around the wall or just call them off and go on. No big deal. But up here, it's a different story.
You wouldn't have places to hunt pretty quick.
Right. And I understand, we pen a lot of cattle for people in this part of the country, but we're always their last resort. Mm-hmm. And normally we can pen a set of cattle and never put a tooth in one. And the only head dogs most people have seen is really rough, tearing ears off and running stock through the fence. And that's just not the old time way. There's a better way to go about it,
Yeah, I never thought of that. When you get called, they've tried feed, they've tried horses, they've tried chasing them to the fence.
They've tried everything.
They've tried everything, and then you get called.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, when we was driving up here, I was telling you about Luke catching them cows for Inhofe. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was a last resort. They'd tried every cowboy around they could to try to catch these, and the guy with dogs was the last.
I get tickled at Bill Inhofe. I've caught cattle for him off the interstates for years. And finally he got him some of his regular hands, that could cowboy enough to catch them. And, prior to that, we got the call. But I charged him pretty stiff per head for what we caught. And if it's them guys that works for him all the time, it don't cost him as much. In fact, the last time I went and caught something for Bill was just back earlier in the year. It was on the news. We went to West Tulsa and caught a couple of cows over there that was getting in a neighborhood and tearing up a yard, and that was right next to 244. And what it was, there'd been a pot wreck there on 244 2 years prior. And these 2 yearling heifers had got away, and there was a patch of timber in there they stayed hid out in, and they got to coming in a lady's yard there across the little old dead end road, and she couldn't get the law to do nothing about it. They couldn't get close enough to them to dart them. And finally she got mad and contacted, I think, Channel 2, that 2 Works For You business.
Yeah.
And they come out there and done a story on these cows, and this woman couldn't get no help. They told her, the law did, she's going to have to hire some professional cowboys. Well, when that aired, Bill Inhofe saw it. And he knew where they came from. So he called the insurance company that had initially paid for the wreck. They said, no, man, we're all done with that. We don't want nothing to do with them. And he called the man that had originally owned them, put them on the truck. And he said, no, we've done been paid for that. Said, if you want them, they're yours. So me and my nephew and another boy went up there for Bill and caught them. And Channel 2 and Channel 6 both come out there and done a little story on it and was on the news. And Lord, it went like that friend of mine in Alabama called. He's seen it in Alabama.
Yeah.
And they've teased me, about being famous. And they asked me, said, would you care to answer some questions about this? And them other boys, they was kind of leery of it, and actually they tried to stay out of sight of the camera, and I said I wouldn't mind answering some questions. And Lord, I talked to them and answered questions for 10 or 15 minutes, and then they put about 15 seconds of it on the news. Yeah. But anyway, Bill, he tells them that I was born 100 years too late, that I was the best cowboy he had seen. We caught a lot of cattle for him years ago. But anyway, back to the story. Just prior to the cowboy time, I decided there was enough hogs up in this country to start hunting, and I wouldn't break a set of these yellow dogs off of cattle. And I told my wife, I said, I used to have some Plott dogs. I'm going to get me some Plotts. And I did, and we started hog hunting in here with them. Well, originally, I had got along really good with Everette Weems dogs, knew him and got dogs directly from him. So that's where I went back to. And then I bred a Weems female that I had to Steve Hurd's Butch dog, which the Weems dogs and the Bluff Creek dogs of the Hurd family all come from one, gene pool. And I got along with them dogs really good. And at the time, I was just keeping 4 here. And Ehrlichia come in this country. I'd never heard of it. I had a cur dog or 2 die mysteriously, and I didn't know why. And I had 2 of the Plott dogs got sick. And I got to find out what's going on with these dogs, and I took them to the vet, and they pulled blood and done that little old panel test, and they've got Ehrlichia. Well, what's Ehrlichia? Well, it's a tick-borne disease, and, it'll do this and this and this, and we can clear it up with doxycycline. Okay, let's have some, So I went to treating them, and the one dog, he just went ahead and died almost immediately. And the female, she carried on for about 6 months through a couple more doxycycline treatments. And finally, she just got to where she wouldn't eat and got so down that I had to put her to dog heaven. And lo and behold, the other two then got sick. And they died. So now I'm out of Plott dogs. And I had heard of, in the meantime, a fellow from Tennessee, Charles Gant, that had bred a line-bred strain of dogs. He raised his first litter right around 1960. He started with dogs from 5 different crosses, and part of those crosses were closely related. And he had never bought a pup bred to an outside dog. That was a closed breeding program. Now, I can show you some papers that'll have a dog or two that don't say Gant, but they're straight Gant dogs that they got from him and he bred to, you know. And I was kind of impressed with the man's program and the reputation the dogs had. And so I got to trying to get a hold of him, and I did. And he said, well, I don't hardly fool with them no more. I'm in poor health. He said, I've got a few here. And he said, but a friend of mine helped me take care of them for the last few years. Said, he's got a litter of pups coming. And I said, well, I'd sure like to try to get a pair of pups. And he said, well, I'll give you his number and tell him you're going to call. And I bought a pair of pups. And, I stayed in contact with him and, told him how them pups progressed. And, we got to be pretty good friends. And they wound up giving me, some more dogs. And then in the meantime, I had got some more Weems Butch Gill dogs, actually from Seth McAlexander. But, all right, Everette Weems and Larry McKenzie Larry lived in Wisconsin and bear hunted all the time. Everette lived in Illinois and traveled to bear hunt. And so Larry McKenzie had a whole bunch of the Weems dogs, and the prominent cross of the Weems dogs in the Plott history was the Butch Gill cross. And so Larry McKenzie had a bunch of the Butch Gill dogs, and the Browns out of Tennessee, James and Ray Brown, they had them. And so Seth McAlexander got acquainted with them. His dad had hunted with Everett some. And he wound up with some really heavy line bred, like 75% Butch Gill blood. And I got some pups from him. And one of them made a really nice dog. Could have been faster. And I thought, I'm going to breed him to that Gant female. He's got a lot of speed behind him, and the Gant dogs all have a lot of speed. And I made a cross. I raised 5 puppies out of that litter. They all made good or better dogs on hogs and bear. And so I'm back in business, with the Weems Gant cross stuff.
When did you get introduced to bear hunting?
Probably back, I'm going to guess, say 12 years ago. And of course, I have to travel to bear hunt.
Yeah.
I got some really good friends, in West Virginia that I go up and hunt with, and I've just had a big time with it. I actually prefer to bear hunt over hog hunting. That's just one more thing a dog's got to do, You can't always rig hogs. You can if you're in hog country, but I like the rigging, and I like the fact the dog has to get treed and stay treed. But I like to hog hunt as well,
When you're bear hunting in West Virginia, you're just in trucks afoot?
Yes, we're in trucks and afoot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And usually, sometimes, if we rig around a while and don't get a strike, we'll turn loose and walk in somewhere. And these dogs, they have I guess nose is subjective. I've not hunted with anybody that my dogs couldn't trail with. I'm sure there's some out there that I can't, And I've not hunted with anybody that my dogs can't run with, but I'm sure there's some they can't. But, what I'm getting at is I haven't had a real wide cross section to compare to. But I know that I've been around a lot of dogs. I'm a wore-out rascal, 67 years old, and they'll suit most people, you know. But we have a lot of fun. Now, one thing I've done to them is sometimes when I travel and hunt and not with them guys, like I ride a mule. And it's hard to lead 6 or 8 dogs out of rough country. And I have somewhat messed my dogs up because of that. I got to making them stay with me and follow me out, and it has knocked the cast out of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, prior to that, you know, I could pull up somewhere and cast them dogs, and it would not be uncommon if they didn't strike for them to go a mile. But since, and I don't know no way to beat this, I can't lead that many out of the bad country, but they won't really cast like they did prior to me making them follow me.
Something about putting a handle on a dog that takes some range out of it.
Well, I think part of it might be, now these dogs was pretty hard-headed about it. Like, they wanted to go back to the tree. If they smelled another track, it was hard to hold them. And I got pretty heavy-handed with them on it in order to get them back.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I hadn't had to be so heavy-handed on them, they would still cast. And I know used to, when I coon hunted all the time, I would lead my dog. A lot of times I'd leave home. I don't coon hunt anymore. I hadn't in many years. But I would leave home riding a mule, leading my dog. When I got where I wanted to go, I'd turn him loose and send him. And he would cast, you know. To me, you turn a cast dog, you turn that dog loose and he goes hunting. I mean, goes hunting. He might make a trip back, he might not, but that's a cast dog.
Yeah, I agree with you.
One that you have to walk, that is not a cast dog. That's a walk hunt dog or a road hunt dog. You know, a cast dog, when you turn him loose, he's going somewhere and going to find game. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, to me, that's common sense.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
And, you know, a lot of folks think just because you got a dog loose, he's a free cast dog. Well, that's not the best definition, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But this is America, and those folks are entitled to theirs.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, one thing about your Plott dogs that, you know, we walked your yard, of course, before we come in here, they're a little bit smaller framed than a lot of the Plott dogs you see.
Okay, generally speaking, now there are exceptions to everything, but generally speaking, the more of the big game Plotts are a little smaller, a little tighter, less houndy. And now there's some strains of big game Plotts that are big houndy dogs and have excelled. But the old-time Plott dogs, actually, the really, really old-time Plott dogs, like from old man Plott, it make him mad you call them hounds. Them wasn't hounds, them was Plott curs.
Yeah, he said curs.
Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of pictures of them old dogs, and they look like cur dogs. Shorter ear, smaller frame, kind of like what's out here.
Yeah. And I really believe, and, well, I know it to be true. I might not can prove it, but I know it to be true. Vaughn put some bloodhound in them for a little colder nose, and here come a little more size and a little more ear.
Well, Vaughn was, about the time he did that, Vaughn worked for he used those dogs, he used bloodhounds to trail prisoners.
From a prison, yeah.
And you know, he was a Plott, you know, himself. But I think, he never admitted that, though, did he?
No, he wasn't secretive about it.
Oh, he wasn't?
No. Now, I started to tell a historical story that I'm not going to do it. It would upset too many people.
Oh, go ahead. Everybody, they can deal with it.
Well, okay. There was a much renowned coon dog that was half bloodhound that there was almost a killing over. Vaughn raised him as a pup, sold him to a man, and that man sold thousands of pups and promoted that dog as the kind. And by all accounts, he really was a super coon dog. But he was not pure Plott. He was part bloodhound. And that guy was not supposed to register him. And Vaughn was a temperamental fella. He was an old chicken fighter and liked to drink and pretty rough customer. And he got some guys to take him to Plott days and took his pistol, going to dispose of that guy for doing that. And they barely talked him out of it. And some more money did change hands. And that was the end of that story. And everybody that knows Plott history will know the man and the dog I'm talking about, so I needn't drag that in here. Yeah. But
and
yeah,
that was like the mid-50s, was it?
No, it's later than that.
Later than that?
I can remember that dog being advertised like 70 to 75 in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And the Cable hounds. There was a family named Cable. They were known to have some bloodhound in theirs. To tell the truth, the Plott dog actually has a little bit of everything in his lineage that ever run loose in the mountains of Tennessee and North Carolina.
Yeah, and then if you go back even further than that, and you go back to Germany, when whatever his name was, it. Well, who was the man? Johannes? Is he the one who brought him to America?
That's one story of their beginning, but a Plott family member disproved that.
Really?
Yeah. Another controversial deal. Really.
Well, before we start, everyone has feelings, and if they get hurt, they will heal back.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
I'm not either.
Well, there again, this is America, and I'm as much entitled to my opinion as they are theirs.
That's right.
Okay? All right. But a Plott family member pretty much disproved the Johannes Plott and his brother coming and bringing them dogs.
Really?
He did come, but he come with his mother and father as about a 5-year-old boy. No dogs was mentioned. And but the Plott dog, as we know it, there was part of the Plott family. I've got the story somewhere. Had moved to Arkansas from North Carolina. Back then, Arkansas was a big bear country, and it was still like frontier kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he moved there with his family and lived for several years. And he wrote home that he wanted to move back to North Carolina. So some of them came to help him move with ox carts. And they took back with them some big Yella cur-type dogs. And that was supposed to have been the base for what we now know as the Plott. And if I'm not mistaken, that was in 1838 when that happened. And ask them, say, well, where'd the Brindle come from? Well, we don't know. And they never could get any of the elder Plott family to really belly up and confirm the ship travel from Germany deal. Although their family did come from Germany, but not the two brother with the dog story.
Okay.
And this really came to light way early when they first went to making this Plott history, but they'd already put that other story out when they found out, and they just wouldn't back up.
Yeah.
And it's only been in more recent years that this other version came out. You know, and of course it was documented that they crossed some leopard dogs in them from out of Georgia. And I have seen people breed leopard dogs and blackmouth cur dogs and get some brindle looking dogs. I've seen that. You know, I mean, I don't know where the brindle came from. And I'm sure there were, I really think that the mountain curs and the Plotts are real closely bred.
They seem like it.
And, but
And it's kind of the same, not Arkansas, but Tennessee. That's kind of the same region.
Yeah. North Carolina and Tennessee and right in there. Yeah. But really, it's the same way with these cur dogs. Their origin has been much debated. And folks say, well, what do you think about that? I said, well, I really don't give a dang what their origin was. I'm just glad they was like they were when I found them because they suit me. You know, that's what matters to me. 40 generations ago, I could care less.
Yeah. But every dog breed has to have that, like, exotic backstory.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, there again, I know a good dog is where you find it. No matter what color it is. And if you got a good one, I enjoy seeing him go. You know, I really do. I like to hunt and see a good dog go. If he outdoes my dogs today, I was proud to see a good one go. It does not offend me. It doesn't make me jealous. Before it's over, I might want some of it. Yeah. You know?
You know what app I use on my phone more than any other app besides the podcast app to listen to this here podcast? I use Onyx. Onyx Maps is the most comprehensive mapping system for hunters on the market today. I use it all the time. When I was in New Mexico, I was looking at 40,000 acres of ranch that I needed to learn. I flip open Onyx and just start studying the map. When I'm riding trails, I put the tracking app on. It helps me get around in strange country. I could mark water sources, food sources, bear sign, just all kinds of options within Onyx. You need to check out Onyx Maps by going to houndsmanxp.com. Click on the link on our sponsor page. You'll go right to Onyx Maps, and when you check out, enter the code HXP20 and you will get 20% off of your order. Know where you stand with Onyx.
Why don't you talk a minute about we was out there looking at your dogs, and you got some younger dogs that you said you just showed a coon to the other day, but then you said that mainly you don't condition young dogs very much, and that you kind of breed.
So basically, we're going to touch on training, right? I am not a dog trainer. I cannot teach a dog to do his job. And if I put the time in to teach him to do his job, he couldn't pass that to the next generation.
Yeah.
Myself, I do very little backgrounding on pups and fooling with them. I'm looking for what they do naturally. And for me to see what they do naturally, the best way I know to do it is to wait until they're at an appropriate age where they can go in real circumstances and the real deal, turn them loose like a big dog and see what they do.
Yeah, but they got to be big enough physically and mentally.
Typically, I start hauling one about 8 months old. That's a little bit young, but if he's really got the desire I'm after, he'll make a big effort, you know. And their first few hunts make a big difference to me in my breeding selections as to what goes forth. Now, if I had an old pup that I hunted, well, I won't have one that I've hunted 20 times and ain't done nothing. He'll no longer be with us. But if I had one that I had to hunt him 20 times to get him to run in tree or run in bay, I don't want any of that. I'm looking for a dog that does what he's supposed to because he can't help himself. He is genetically hardwired to do that. His instincts come out, and he performs in this fashion.
So when you go to breed, those dogs that you know are natural starters, they're probably at the top.
That's what I breed. Yeah. And now, all I teach a dog, as puppies, I give them room, board, medical care, then a ride to the woods and opportunity. After that, all I teach them is what not to do. Don't be growly. Don't run trash. Don't go the other way if I say come here. Don't bark if I say shut up. Yeah, that's all my training. Whatever he does other than that is what his instincts are driving him to do, and I will judge him accordingly.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty harsh critic of my own stuff.
And that's what, like, going back to the hog dogs, I've never liked the putting them in a pen, doing that. Like, I'm all for, like you're saying, like, I might mock hunt one, and after that, I like going to the woods. I like, you kind of get the gist of it. We're going to the woods.
Well, I showed you them pups are 5 months old, and I told you I showed them a coon. That's all the background they'll get. And sometimes, the right time of the year, I'll bring a hog in and do that. And I don't put them in a pen. I might hobble that hog and turn them pups loose and let them see it and bay it. And then after they've bayed it pretty good, when they go to about halfway getting wore out, I catch them, tie them up, turn the hog loose, let it get plumb gone, see if the pups want to go. And that'll be all the training they get. I'm not big on the bay pen deal. I've been to several hog bayings, maybe 4. I didn't like them and done well at them. I'd always take an old cur dog pup. He might not ever seen a hog, but he'd bay a dragonfly, And we've won and placed in them every time we went. But I just did not enjoy the bay pen thing at all. Some people do. That's great. I'm not knocking them. It's just not for me. Yeah. They probably wouldn't enjoy following me all night hog hunting. I understand that, We all have our likes and dislikes.
I agree with you there. Like, just like you said, I go to Earl's with Ed, and he goes and sets up. We go to some hog bays and stuff, and I wouldn't say I dislike it, but at the same time, it's not my cup of tea. But
yeah, we're not putting dogs in either.
No, we're not putting dogs in it. But them guys, if they love it,
yeah,
let them do it.
Well, and I would venture a guess that it's as hard to get an outstanding, may win it all bay pen dog as it is to get an outstanding woods dog.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be as difficult to reach the upper end of the bay pen as it would in the woods.
Yeah, and because they're, I was getting ready to say they're training against the dog. I mean, in a way, they're training against some of the dog's natural instinct in the bay for like the strictly bay pen dogs. So, I mean, it gets easier, I imagine, or of course it's going to have to get easier as they breed these pen dogs year after year after year. But they want a dog that's going to bay this far from its nose, is going to take a charge head on.
Can't do that in the woods.
No, we don't want that. So you know what I mean? So they're breeding for something that's hard to do.
Right.
I'm not knocking it because it would be super hard to do. Mm-hmm. Like if we decided we were going to try to just take some woods dogs and train them to be strictly bay pen dogs, we could probably do it for the rest of our lives and not really get
You'd probably need a different kind of dog than you're feeding today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, if you think about it, if you go back far enough, somebody had to do that in the beginning.
Yeah.
Somebody had to take just some old woods dogs and turn them into what they are now. So yeah, it's hard. It's not my thing, but I can watch it. I can watch the superb dogs at it and enjoy some of it.
Yeah.
Just because I can acknowledge all the work that had to go into it. Mm-hmm. But I can't sit in them bleachers for 3 days straight.
No, it's not my thing. We went, I think the last baying we went to, the HXP Cattlemen's Association, which was the Cattlemen's Association down there in southeastern Oklahoma. All them guys I knew that run cattle out in the Weyerhaeuser land. Excuse me. Weyerhaeuser was kicking them off with the cattle. And the people that Weyerhaeuser bought it from had it in the contract that the people in the community down there could always use that land. But that was a contract that was like 60 years old. Mm. That page come up missing. In in that contract. So Weyerhaeuser's kicking the cattlemen out of their timberland. And they had a hog ban to help raise money for lawyers to try to fight that. Well, I knew all them guys, and I always joined the association when we'd go down there to the dog trials. And so we went to the hog ban. And I had an old yellow pup. Actually, it belonged to my daughter. She was young at the time. She was probably 8. Called him Old Goose. She loved this dog. And he was a really nice pup. And so I took him down there and I entered him in the young dog deal. The one dog, young dog. I had him and another young dog in the 2-dog bay, and they caught out. Dang, So I entered this younger one in the 1-dog deal. And I'm telling you what, buddy, I guess for Bay Pen people, he did put on a show. Because they swarmed me wanting to buy that pup after this deal. I mean, he was hammering and never broke contract. That hog was trying to eat him. And he'd just shuffle and dodge without ever breaking eye contact and hammering. And he got cut pretty good up across there. And I thought, boy, Chelsea will be mad at me. And old Clay Hurst, friend of mine, he was there. He said, bring that dog out here and we'll staple him up. And we stapled his old skin back together. But old Goose, he showed out down there at the dog try, at the hog bay.
And that was a yellow dog?
Yeah.
But guys, that's what we try to hunt with people and then do our podcast, and it's 105 degrees in Oklahoma right now is why and we've even done some while we're hunting. We've done a few podcasts while we're pig hunting, in the truck. But that's our reasoning for not going hunting. But we might try to change that.
Yeah.
We might try to get together and...
I wouldn't be opposed at all to going hunting together. It cools off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you've been hunting. You hunting this heat?
I hunted Monday and like to kill some dogs and my mule.
Yeah.
I really did. There was a friend of mine from Texas, got a cabin down at Mena. And he and his family came and they wanted to hunt a day or two. And I said, sure, just holler at me when you get there. Well, when I got home Monday with my dogs all about heat stroked out, there was the voicemail on the answering machine that they was there. And I had to tell him, I said, man, this week it's just too hot. I like to wipe myself out of dogs today.
Yeah.
And, when it was 80 degrees when you start and 100 by noon, guy can't always get out of the woods in time,
Yeah, like we were talking about over supper, that we got a lot of rain early this summer, late spring, and it's more humid than it usually is.
No, I feel like it is.
And that high humidity takes a toll on a dog harder than heat when we're dry, kind of like normal. I mean, we do it all the time. We'll be hunting in the summer and we're like, it ain't that hot, even when it is dry. And you turn dogs loose and then you get off into the woods and then you quickly realize it's way hotter than we figured it was.
Yeah.
And the dogs are already out and, yeah, they don't quit because it's hot.
Right.
It's easy to...
Normally, I say this week's been kind of different. Normally, I can go hunting early in the morning, maybe start just before, right at daylight, and gives me enough time to do a one and done thing. But if you strike a little bit later and run a little bit further, it can be too late and too hot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling you earlier, I'm kind of short on dogs right now. I lost 5 prior to last year, and I got a bunch of pups coming on to fill the numbers back up.
It happens. It happened to me. I mean,
It happens to everybody.
I hunted the same 5 dogs or 4 dogs for
8 years.
Long time. And then by the time I guess I was smart enough to realize that the females wasn't cycling like they needed to, but we finally got something to happen, and
what's going on?
I got some pups coming on as well. So,
earlier I was telling you about that Alice female, and I could breed her to any of them 4 males out of Ricky and Jolene and just raise cow dogs. Shoot, there ain't nothing to keeping yourself in dogs. No big deal. I can just raise a litter of good ones anytime I want to. I was young and dumb and, a little overconfident, you might say. And so that Gyp went to getting old, and I kept a real nice female out of her. And this was a good-looking rip that would get it on. Now, I mean, she was a cow dog. And so the old Gyp gets old and passes on, needs some pups. I breed this young Gyp, and one of them makes. Breed her again. Different dog, same family. They're all family bred. I ain't got a one that made. I bred her one more time to a dog that Ben had that was producing pretty well, And Lisa's brother, my brother-in-law, D, give him a pair of them. And that was all that left here. His 2 made. I didn't get a one of them. And so I learned right then, you got to be careful about running out of dogs. Now, what I did, I went and borrowed a Gyp that another guy had that had come from my yard, and hauled her and bred her and got back going. But that taught me something. Now, this is contrary to a lot of people's opinion on breeding dogs. I'm really bad to breed dogs fairly early, because no matter how good that sucker is on the ground and in the woods, you don't know if they're going to produce squat until you've bred them and the pups is old enough to go. And because that nearly ran me out of dogs that time, I am bad to breed a 18, 20-month, 2-year-old male or female, so that I know if I can count on them to raise me another generation of them.
Find out if they're producers.
Yeah. Just because they're a good dog don't mean they'll produce good.
A lot of the really great ones don't.
The superstars rarely ever produce super. That's something else. Some of my old breeder friends told me, and I just soaked it up and watched it, and it's true. If you keep breeding good, well-balanced, solid dogs to good, well-balanced, solid dogs, some superstars will pop up. But almost never will a superstar produce a superstar. Mm-hmm. It's almost like they're a genetic mutation or something.
I always thought of them as just like a freak of nature.
A genetic mutation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not, you rare. In the coon dog world, you see it a lot just because they breed a lot. Mm. And they'll be just amazing coon dogs that just, they breed a lot of Gyps, but you don't see you don't see much of them back on the winters. And
there's been a ton of top, very well-known reproducers, males or females, that they had a litter mate that was a superstar. And this good, solid, average dog way outproduced them.
Yeah.
A litter mate to the superstar.
What do you think? So when you go to breed dogs, do you think that the male or the female plays a bigger part in the pups, or do you think it's even, or what do you think on that?
In my feeble mind, that's pretty simple. Okay? That puppy is 50% of the male's chromosomes and 50% of the females. Now, the exception is you can have a male or a female that is a prepotent reproducer. And if you have either one, you have a wonderful gift. If you've got a female that don't matter much what you breed her to, she throws good pups, yeah. She's a prepotent reproducer, and the same thing with a male. But just everyday average, even terms, it takes 50% of his genetics and 50% of hers to make that puppy. And then they say, well, the female has a lot more impact on them environmentally. And I don't buy that, because she'll have them 6 weeks. I'll have them 6 years.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I've seen gyps like that you could take them to town and just let a stray dog breed them, and they came out looking just like her, acted just like her.
That's what I like. And my theory, these young fellas all want male dogs. I said, nah, if you want to stay in dogs, you need a good female. If I've got a top female, I can find a male that will fit her.
Yeah.
But if I got the best male in Oklahoma and I don't own a female, or the right female don't come to him, it ain't going to help nothing. You know. And of course, not everybody's willing to, like, Lord, I've drove 12, 14, 16 hours to get a dog or breed a dog, or, you know, because I was serious about what I was getting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people just won't go to that trouble. They'll breed handy to ready and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And dog feed's too high.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You were talking earlier about, you know, about when you almost got, you know, out of the business. And that's what I was going to say. Back then, dog food wasn't near what it is today.
Well, that's why you walked around out here. You see, I've got lots of dogs. That's why. I almost ran out one time because I had all my eggs in that one gyps basket. And I decided that will never happen again. I will keep all ages and all stages coming, and I will keep more than I can do justice to use. One bad hot day, I can lose 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and if I ain't got another 3 or 4 at home, I'm out of business. That's why I keep extra dogs.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you just said there that is a total gem is to keep a bunch in different stages of life.
Yep.
It's easy to get, like, oh, I got a good pack of dogs. And then you wake up one morning and you go, oh, wait, these things are all old.
Yeah. I try to keep some coming all the time, you know, different ages.
How many days out of the year you think you hunt? Just a guess, obviously, but
Hunt and gather cattle.
yeah.
Oh, hunt and gather cows together. I probably hunt and gather cows, I don't know, 125 days a year.
Well, I mean, that's for this day and age.
Oh, that's
in
a lot.
Days, well, that's a lot.
That's one. That's going,
You know.
every 3 days going.
And, yeah, a lot of times when the weather's nice, I'll hunt at least 2 days a week, and then we may pen cattle a day or two, you know, also. And but then there are periods of the year that it don't do as much of either.
Yeah.
You want to let him in on our bet we had?
Yeah.
All right.
It was $100,
I think no, I don't think it was $100. We didn't shake.
Was it 200?
So we ate dinner before we come, and I lost the bet. But you was going with your stories and your cowboying and your hunting and all that. And on the way here, one of us asked, "Do you think he's married?" And about his hunting stories, and I said, "No, he ain't."
These two said, "There's no way."
He ain't married.
I'm married to a very special woman.
That's what I'm getting at.
Hey, but let me tell you, that ain't the first one.
That's what Ed said you was married, and
These two were like, "There's no way he could do all that if he's married." I was like, "You got to take his age into account." And I was like,
That woman has supported me. She helps take care of the pups. She used to rope some with me, gather cattle all day. She won't hardly hunt with me. She had some long, bad, hard days up front. She won't hardly hunt with me.
that happens.
"You didn't do that on purpose, did you?"
No, it's just part of the deal. But
Ed, we're not trying to get him in
hey,
trouble.
the last time she went, I think it's year before last. You know, she'll go once in a while. We rode 10 hours, and we had dogs treed miles from the truck. We've been riding pretty much all day. And finally, they're treed off the 1, 2, 3, off the third mountain over the bottom of it, far side. And we didn't have no light or nothing, and it was late in the year. Well, I knew there was it was barely a trail now, but it had once been an old road. Went down. There's not hardly any place down there within a football field size that I ain't put a mule track or a footprint, And I knew there was that old trail up there, and so we was coming up the mountain. I'm kind of hustling, want to get to that trail, and then the dogs is way off the other side. I said, Lisa, that is really steep and really rough. I said, if you want to, I said, we got to use this trail to get out of here to an old road to get back to the truck, because we can't go back like we came in the dark. It's just too rough. You can't do it. It's impossible to do unless you go at a snail's pace. And I said, if you want to, wait right here and I'll run down there and get them dogs. No, I'm not waiting right here. I've rode all day and carried this camera. I'm going to them dogs. I said, okay, let's go. Off there we went. And we got them and got back up out of there. And we did get to the truck right before dark, so we didn't, have any issues. But she don't mess with me. She don't worry about me. It's really, I enjoy it. I appreciate her. Early on, we hadn't been married long, and her brother and I went to Camp Gruber, went hog hunting, and with cur dogs. I hadn't got no Plott dogs yet. And her sister and her father are like worry warts galore. So it gets dark, and we're not here. And one of them called Lisa and said, have you heard from him? No. What are you going to do? She said, well, he always eats breakfast. Said, if they're not here for breakfast in the morning, we can go to calling the law and the hospitals and see if they're okay. Like worried them to death. But, she wasn't worried. I know the way home.
You was hog hunting in Gruber?
Yeah.
There's been hogs there forever.
Yeah.
That's what I done some work there for. Actually Camp Gruber, and he's shade be all over me if I'd done that right there.
Oh,
but no, there was elk all around our equipment at night and stuff working there in Camp Gruber, but a few hog tracks would show up too there. So
yeah, they've been there forever.
Hey, I was raised over there. We ran cattle in Camp Gruber when I was very small.
Really?
Where were you raised at?
I was raised between the Holbert, Tahlequah, and Fort Gibson. If you just draw that triangle and go to the middle, that's where I was raised. But my dad always ran cattle there in Camp Gruber. And you could run like from April to September, there. And you could run basically twice as many cattle as just on your property, because you could pasture them down there, let your place grow up or make hay, and, Mm-hmm. And but the reason they let people run cattle in there, it was part of a tick control program. I mean, when I was a little boy, the only place we'd hardly ever see deer was in Camp Gruber. And riding in there for cattle, I've seen deer that the ticks killed. I've seen deer that just had ticks matted on them. They wasn't dead, but they was blind. And they let people run cattle in there, but they put them on a real rigorous spraying program. You had to spray or dip. I was a kid about every 30 days.
They had
dipping vats.
Dipping vats in there.
Yep. And if you didn't want to use dipping vats, you could spray. But that ruined me. I have ridden there as a little boy, till my legs was raw enough to scab, pinning them cattle out of there, and wouldn't say a word. No way, because if you whined or complained, they might make you stay home with the women. But that built a love for old big wild country in me. Man, I felt like that was the frontier. 5 years old, riding all over Camp Gruber from daylight till dark. I felt like Daniel Boone, man.
Well, it probably wasn't even Camp Gruber at that point, was it?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah, it was still camp.
Yeah, a bunch of my family lived there before they took the land and turned it into camp.
And we'd drive them cattle out of there. We had a place that was, let's say, straight south, almost of what they call Wild Horse Prairie.
Oh, yeah.
Straight south of there. And my dad had a friend that had land that laid between the highway and Camp Gruber. And we would drive cattle out of there, across his place, and cross the highway onto the dirt roads and drive them home. Because you can drive 30, 40 head quicker than you could haul them, because back then nobody had trailers. Mm-hmm. We mostly hauled everything in a half-ton pickup with stock racks.
Yeah.
You know?
Stock trailers are pretty new. Pretty new.
They didn't nobody have one when I was small.
Probably, especially around here.
Yeah. They might have been somewhere in the world, but not anybody I knew.
No, they wasn't around Braggs, Oklahoma.
Yeah. You know, everybody had a pickup and stock racks. A little better setup was a 1 ton with stock racks. And if it's really big time, you had one of them old 2 tons with stock racks.
That's what my uncle, you know my uncle, but a lot of his rodeo friends, you know, they come to the Locust Rodeo. They all come in their big rigs and all that. Well, you know, a lot of people go ride around the rodeo and their horses and this and that. You know, they have the Founders Day Parade and all that. Well, here comes old Beater Pickup Stock Rack. His buddies were just in awe, you know, of backing up in a ditch and letting the horses jump out. And I always laugh about that because not everybody understands what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We didn't even have to use a ditch.
Yeah.
Preferred to, but it wasn't necessary.
Didn't have to, yeah.
Jump one in or out without it. You know, that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. We're going to hit you up and go hunting.
That'd be good.
And we might do another one of these.
That'd be fine.
I bet you got it. We didn't even hardly get into hunting stories.
Oh, no.
We'll save.
I may not live long enough to tell them all.
Yeah, I bet you do. But yeah, we'll get back up with you, and we'll do another one of these. I don't know when, it may be a year, who knows? But we'll do another one, and we'll focus on hunting stories because we heard a few while we was eating supper, and I think it'd make a pretty good podcast.
Okay, be fine. Come with an agenda, and I'll try to comply.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, we thank you for listening.
Appreciate you guys coming in and having the talk.
Yeah, we enjoyed listening. Yeah. We'll see y'all next time.